Lexy, great to see you.
Good to see you in London.
I know, you've been saying like over and over, when are you coming to London? When are you coming? And I'm here.
Finally.
And then I was badgering Lexy. I'm like, you got to join me for an interview. People want to hear from you. You got to join me. And she's like, oh, okay, fine. So I'm really lucky and I'm really happy. And I'm really honored that you're here with me. So thank you so much.
I'm honored to be here.
Yes. So Btomorrow Ventures, tell us all about what you guys do.
So Btomorrow Ventures is the corporate venture fund of British American Tobacco. I know, what is Btomorrow Ventures doing here? But with a mission of investing in well-being and stimulation and building the second core for what could be the alternative to nicotine, cigarettes, healthier, better for you, functionality, basically in the same way that nicotine stimulates you in the senses. That's what we're looking for in terms of product.
A functional benefit, as it were.
Functional.
Yeah.
Big word.
Talk about your investment focus in terms of stage, region, size of the company.
So Fund 1 that we had and deployed money out of was focused on really early stage. We've done pre-seed investments, moment. But Fund 2 as of last year, we're looking at much more established brands that really we're looking to partner with and scale and help them scale in retail. So it's more of a synergy, but marrying the startup with the corporate powers that we can leverage to just build, help them build to the next level of like their journey and then acquire them, maybe, maybe not. So not everything is really like an acquisition target, and not all of our companies, like we don't look to necessarily acquire everything that we invest in, but we do want to sort of partner up with the next innovative brand company that we can then somehow integrate and not really integrate into BAT, because I think this is something that people might not know. BAT has launched their own kind of functional drink, and it's part of that second core, and it's really integrating it together with the business that we're building.
Can you talk about check size?
Yeah, sorry, I missed that.
No, I just asked. So what's a typical check size for your investments?
We're pretty flexible. I think we'd go now. We'd be looking at like 10 to 30 million. Okay. Yeah.
I know who couldn't use 10 to 30 million here. I mean, so don't worry. The
Speak
people
to me
need
after.
that. Yeah, speak to her after. Okay. With Moment, it was a smaller. You mentioned Moment,
Very
which
small.
is a brand of calming beverages that actually won BevNET's New Beverage Showdown competition in 2020. It was a virtual competition. They did quite well. What were the brand attributes? What made you really excited about that brand as having a long runway for success?
So I think it's not just Moment, but my general rule is look to invest in people, because they're the ones that are making the decisions. They're the ones that have to turn a business around if like times are hard. And I always look to see who am I investing in and what are they about, like their personality, their grit, their tenacity, the sort of don't take no for an answer from anybody. And it's like that's really my core kind of, I don't know, I guess sheet that I look at. It's the personality, the character, the sort of purpose, what they're trying to build. Why are they building this business? Where do they want to go? What's their vision? And for Moment, actually, like they're still a very small team. So I don't think they've grown very much in the past like 3.5 years that we've been invested, but they've literally turned every single dollar in the most efficient, more dollars that I've ever seen. And they've done it predominantly like online, so direct to consumer, and they just nailed that model. That's kind of like, I know I keep banging on about people, but it really is the sort of the people that I look to sort of back. And then, of course, the brand. Is it really like speaking to the consumers? Is it on trend? Is it something that like, I don't know. I'm not that type of investor that looks at things like I know it all, because I don't. Nobody knows it all. I think it's more following instinct and gut, and that's also something that I look in founders, like how much are they driven by their inner genius versus like the race to kind of get to the next thing, right? But going back to sort of the more practical stuff, of course, like you look at the numbers, traction, like, is it fit? Does it work for the market? Is it scalable? I know that we're looking to sort of touch upon that. And that's actually like a really, it's hard to tell whether a brand is scalable or not, really. But going back to sort of the character and the tenacity of the founder, what I've seen works really well is like, do you have the foresight to understand the market that you're looking to scale in? Do you understand the consumer in the markets that you're looking to scale in? Does it fit? What's your competition like? The legal stuff is really big. I mean, I'm sure Trip can talk all about the legal, because I think marketing and speaking to the consumer and your brand positioning in one market will be very different to a different market. And I've seen moments of one of our brands do sort of licensing deals in Japan, and like they've had to do certain changes, but that grit that the founders have in terms of really being obsessed with the consumer and speaking to the consumer, and they read everything that comes through, like all the feedback, every single piece of like information that they can get and then turn into sort of bettering the business again. I think that is magic, right? Because we are all figuring it out, so we don't know everything, but it's that being obsessed with the details and the consumer, and then being on top of like, what are the big things that could stop you from being successful, which I really do think it's the regulatory environment and the challenges.
You're based here in London, but you visited the United States a number of times. You invest in US-based brands. For folks here that are based in the UK, just from an experience perspective and what you've seen, how would you assess the two different markets? I mean, how do you think about a brand's potential to be able to scale here in the UK versus one in the United States? And how much crossover do you think there could be between the two countries?
I think it's tough. I mean, like Ray said, I probably spend my life on the plane, and I spend a lot of time in the States. The two markets are very different and not at the same time. I think the UK is sort of a little bit behind on kind of the US in terms of where the consumer is, but catching up very fast. I don't know. I know I'm maybe repeating myself. Being obsessed with understanding what the consumer wants and understanding the market is easy to say. I think my biggest advice is partner with someone who can help you make that transition at the right time. Like, you can't do it alone. Like, no one can do it alone. There's no way. The UK is such a small market versus the US, but it's probably not a bad time to sort of look at who is a good partner. Be careful who you take money from. Like, it's like a marriage. So who do you want to get in bed with and spend the rest of your life with? That's kind of how you should treat your investors too. And then just see what they can bring to the table. I really think that, to answer your question in the most honest way, if you have an investor on your cap table, make them accountable for why they're sitting in your board meetings. And like, what are you bringing to the table? Don't just like present to them, but like ask them to sort of bring value to you and what your ambitions are. And timing, right? Like, don't just take any money at any point in time because you need it. Yes, you will need money, but be careful where you kind of commit yourself. Where could it trip you over at what point in time in your journey? But yeah, I would totally just advise partner up with someone who's got the power to just help you make that transition. Because even with our brands, even with Moment, like, we're very invested in their success and we want them to do well. But there's so much that not even I know, that I had to learn from teams in big corporate, that's their job. That's what they do day in, day out. And you can't do it alone. Ask for help. Don't be ashamed to ask for help. The worst thing that can happen is you get a no, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, speaking to entrepreneurs on Taste Radio, the ones that have built the best teams are usually the ones that have the highest return on their own personal investment and some of the biggest exits that we've seen in the industry. Just going back to international expansion for a second, do you see any parallels, do you see any common threads between brands that can successfully scale internationally, whether it's the United States or otherwise? And, specific brand attributes. I mean, so for example, a trip, what is it about a trip that would interest you as an investor at a brand and product level? Again, fantastic founders, amazing team, but there's still that component of the physical product.
Well, in all transparency, we wanted to invest in Trip, and we were very keen and have been kind of courting Trip for a long time. I was joking that Daniel keeps playing hard to get, but no, on a serious note, even with Trip, right, from before, I don't think we ever even got to the stage of looking at a deck. So going back to my initial point of, I think they nailed their branding. Nailed. Like, it speaks to everyone. It's simple, it's easy, you can understand it, and you can make, I think, the right kind of adjustments to speak to sort of wherever you're looking to scale if you need to, right? And secondly, like, when I spoke to Daniel about the brand, it was like their obsession around like making it like taste good. So again, like having it available so that everyone really can relate to the product. It's the sense that I got from the team was an absolute passion and dedication with like the detail. It's like nothing would go past it. Like I could sense it from the conversation. In fact, he was talking about you and how like absolutely adamant you were about everything being perfect. And that is something that founders need to do, because like that's what makes you guys special. You've got that inner genius. Let it come out. Like let it be driving you when you're creating your product and you're looking to make decisions, big decisions, risky decisions. And I think, like I said, regulatory, if you're mindful about the kind of ingredients that you have in your product, you've got to be, again, obsessive about what you put in there, because the regulators would look for any kind of opportunity to just say no, or to come after you and just kind of destroy anything you've built at the point where you're scaling. Is that helpful?
It is very helpful. I'm sure we're going to get a very loud applause at the end, but I do have one more question.
Oh, dear.
That's related to global trends. And, you know, we were doing some store visits earlier this week. We were at Whole Foods, we were at Sainsbury's, we were at a few other places. And, you know, I saw some things that I see in the United States. I saw some things I don't see too much of in the United States.
Like what?
Well, I brought this up. Magnesium waters, for example. Magnesium is a hot trend in the United States, but I don't think we've seen too many RTDs come to market in the U.S., and maybe that's just, we're a bit behind on that, or maybe I'm just not in the right places or shopping in the right places. Ready to drink super bottled soups, for example. Less of that in the U.S., more of that here. But aside from that, you know, how do you perceive, or what's your perception of global trends that we're seeing that have legs, that have long-term value versus ones that are sort of fly-by-night?
I'm going to give you a very me answer. And
sure, that's why you're
sorry
here.
if this is not what you guys want to hear. I fundamentally believe, from what I've observed, is that our generation today is like is in the race of like longevity and just health, and it's like we're so obsessed with like being healthy, feeling good, because like before it was more like adding the sugar and the caffeine and like, you know, staying on top of it. And I think our generation and the generations below, definitely, they're looking at how do we go back to basics and what products can we use to essentially enhance like or rebalance what's going on in life and in our bodies and dealing with like everyday life, right? So trends are driven by consumers, and consumers drive those trends from experiences. I mean, almost every founder that I've spoken, there's that drive from a passion of wanting to do something better, right? So I think like the two are interconnected. And I know I'm not answering your question, and I'm deliberately not answering your question, because I think, who am I to say like what trends work, what trends don't work? The trends that work are the ones that the consumers want to kind of get on board with. So be obsessed with your consumers and what you're seeing, because everything changes so fast. Like if you're trying to you've got to innovate all the time in the sense of what you're doing, but your product has to have a stickiness to the core of like something authentic that your mission is kind of looking to change, to drive, to sort of serve yourself because you're a consumer, but also like the people around. And like I said, I think it differs in every country. It's different because it's culturally also driven. And what I have seen is that there's a lot of there's that drive for founders to look to sort of more Eastern ways of like remedies, taking that, my point, going back to basics, but how do we innovate those things so they're in a format where it serves a society that's very fast-paced, that makes decisions, consumers that are fickle, that, you know, consumers switch very quickly. Like, you make one mistake and that's it, you're out. Does that answer your question?
It does. It does. You said you didn't answer my question intentionally, but I feel like you did answer my question. Lexy, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it. I highly recommend, if you're going to stick around, don't take up all Lexy's time, because I have a feeling everyone is going to want to talk to her, but just give her your business card, maybe follow up with a conversation down the line. Thank you so much again, Lexy.
Thank you.
Round of applause.
Thanks, everyone.